Minutes were sent out. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, I would entertain a motion to
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
have a motion to approve from Kevin and a second from Nancy. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. First thing on the agenda, we have abatements, and Bernie. It's for Indiana Furniture.
What you've got in front of you, I believe it was handed out in advance of this meeting. You've got our CF1 personal property, the CF1 real property, and then a summary of our 11 tax abatement. This is year 10 of 10 for the real property. This will be the last one for that real property form under this abatement. For the personal property, there was a multi-year window, like a 4-year window. So some of those assets are dropping off. Some of them will still carry on for another year or two before they've been fully covered under that 10-year window. So the assessed valuation under manufacturing equipment last year was $725,000. This year it's down to $477 because more of those assets are dropping off that personal property tax abatement. So on that summary sheet of our 2011 abatement, the underlying information is that information that I updated from prior years. So just a couple of bullet points. You can see we've continued to invest in that facility, $427,000 last year, and there's $1 million in process at this point in time. Our head count is down from last year's tax abatement forms from 289 down to 277. That's where we were at the end of the year. We continue to struggle to fill our open positions and get enough people in. Our head count as of March 6th was up to 287, but then as of Monday of this week, it was back down to 273. So we still, we've hired 61 people so far this year, and we've lost 65 as of the end of the day Friday. So that battle continues. It's just like a swinging door. We try to come up with some different programs. Some of you may have seen us advertising our Flex 40 program as a way of attracting some people. That program has been somewhat successful, but still through attrition and a variety of different reasons, we still continue that fight for employees, like probably everybody else in the county. Actual salary per job is up a little bit over last year. All of our employees last year on the shop floor got between a 4% and a 5% increase. We're having discussions now on what that increase will be this year. The dollars don't quite work out that way, but we added other machines that aren't abated, which takes some of the load off of these abated machines. So some employees were added under those other machines, but they don't qualify for this particular tax abatement. Other than that, I would just answer any questions if anybody has any.
Great summary, Bernie. It really helps to have it printed out like you have here.
Welcome.
The forms make a whole lot more sense.
Okay.
Construction coming along okay, or moving
Yeah.
in that direction?
Yeah, that's coming along really well. We're
Okay.
really, if there's such a thing as construction being ahead of schedule, we think we're ahead of schedule. Our steel actually showed up about a month early, which was a big surprise to us. So a lot of that steel is up already out behind our flatline plant. So things are going well there.
Okay.
We did close on the sale of our Du Bois plant about a week and a half ago, so that plant has been sold. We're currently renting some space from the old Kitchen Jewels building in Jasper right now, and when our expansion on the south side is done, then we plan to vacate that building and move that production into the south side, as well as some production out of our current Mill Street building too.
Who purchased the Du Bois facility?
Wabash Valley purchased the Du Bois.
Oh, wow.
Any movement on the sale of your Mill Street building?
We do have some interested parties. We're actively working on a purchase agreement, but that's in the hands of the attorneys right now, and I don't know that we're allowed to share anything at this.
But there is some progress going.
Interest was expressed by multiple parties, and we've narrowed that down to one, and now we're working on that purchase agreement, yes. You're welcome.
I think the investments that you've made have kept you viable during some tough times.
Yeah.
It shows here that you continue to invest and grow the business. I think the program has done what it was intended to do. So with that, I guess if,
Mayor, seeking a motion to approve with substantial compliance to the CF1s for Indiana Furniture to continue the abatement.
Now second it.
I have a motion from Paul and a second from Kevin that Indiana Furniture be in substantial compliance. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Bernie.
Bernie.
And next I have Kimball Furniture and Kimball Hospitality. Tanya Maringer is not here. Okay. They did submit their report, which I think, did you also got copies?
You did? Do we table that since he's not here?
I think so. I think it's important that they come before us.
I agree.
on these
Is
abatements.
there enough time on their abatement
They're supposed to,
to table it to the next meeting?
is there? Okay.
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
The abatement don't have to be until May 14th.
May 14th?
Has enough time to come the next meeting.
In April. Okay, seeing the absence there, I'll make a motion to table the Kimball Furniture and Kimball Hospitality abatement hearing until the April meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion from Paul and a second from Kevin. Any further discussion on it? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next, I have a department presentation. We've got these scheduled each month, trying to bring a different department in. So with Police Department, Chief Nathan Schmidt.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
First of all, it's nice to be here and talk to you guys. I'm glad the mayor asked me to do it, and I think it's kind of a neat thing to get to talk to you guys and not ask for money for once when I'm talking in front of you. Talk to you guys. I don't want to bore you with a bunch of numbers, but I'm going to bore you with a bunch of numbers. And first of all, if you look at the page I handed out, calls for services. Calls for services include all police activity, so everything from traffic stops to domestics to anything that police do is calls for services. That's something that an officer is dealing with or dispatchers are dealing with. So you can see in that first box they've gone up over the years, and they continue to go up a little bit every year except for 2020. Obviously, I'm going to refer to that as COVID year. I'll be talking about that, referring to that several times as I'm talking here. But COVID year is just kind of different and everything. People were home and domestics were down. And we'll refer to this later too. The first is call for services, and then the third box down is arrest, but our calls for domestics arrests were up in 2020. So the calls were down, but we made more arrests on that. And obviously, COVID year, probably people being in the same house and being home, it's going to be I don't know, more toxic situations, but they refrained from calling us. But when we did call, they were obviously something enough to make arrest on. It was good to look at these numbers. You know, we do reports every month, and we send them out. And to be completely honest, we do look at numbers at the police department, but we don't try to reflect as much as we look towards the future. You know, the numbers that we get are the numbers that we have, and. You know, we do look at trends, and so it's kind of neat to look at these and analyze them for this program tonight. But the big thing is extra patrols was like the biggest jump, and that's the number 2 line in the first box. You can see in 2017 we had extra patrols 380, and then we're up to just shy of 3,000.
These are requests, right?
Well, not necessarily all requests, but it can be everything from requests for speeders in your neighborhood to suspicious subjects in your neighborhood, crimes like we have been having a lot of catalytic theft from vehicles and stuff. So, you know, if officers will put out extra patrols for the car lots or places that might be targeted. So have guys hit those more than they normally do. So those are all extra patrols too. And yeah, parks, if we have a problem in the parks, Kale might say, hey, we've had vandalism or something like that. We would create an extra patrol to kind of draw the guys' attentions to that area so they can maybe hit it more than they normally do.
That seems like an extreme jump. Is that something that you've been trying to focus more on, or why would that jump?
You know, I think it's a combination of a lot of things. I do, and that's funny because that wasn't on my original list that I put together for tonight. And I'm looking at what numbers have really jumped out. Why did we go from 13,000 calls to 14,000 and almost 15,000 calls? So we were looking through our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatch that keeps track of all this. And one thing we noticed were extra patrols that went up. And I think people being home and working from home, they maybe call more things in. I think that officers we're out being down officers. I think people maybe are calling more because maybe they're not seeing the officer presence they've seen in the past. So I think it's a combination of things. You know, I think it's just when we have an issue, I think that we're trying to be more. Try to hit those places, make sure that guys are being aware of it, sharing information type thing, you know. So every time an extra patrol comes out, we email the guys so they know that, hey, this is something that you can't miss. You know, they'll read call sheets, but, you know, they may or may not focus their attention on it. So it's something to say, hey, when you're patrolling, check this area. So it does seem extreme, and that's the only thing I can come up with. And then I just want to point out animal complaints. It's something we deal with, right? And it's everything from dog bites to barking dogs to dogs running at large. And it's just something that I think you guys are aware of. You guys get calls on it. You guys see it, but something that I don't know if the public realizes that we go to 226 animal complaints a year, you know, so at least last year.
But at least on that number, it's consistent for the past
Yes.
5 years. It's not really gone up or anything.
Yep. No, but it stayed pretty well the same. But it is an aspect of the police department that we do have to do that we wish we didn't, you know, we have to focus on other things. That's pretty much for calls for service. Any questions on that? I mean, anything else that draws your attention?
On those numbers, pardon me, the total calls for service don't equal the numbers underneath it, though.
No. I mean, we have.
Are those part of the total calls?
Yes, they are part of the total calls for service, correct. But we have probably, you know, I'm guessing maybe 45 calls for service. You know, where when you call in, and the thing is too is these are. Somebody calls in a suspicious subject, we'll do a suspicious subject, but then down when we look at the arrest, they might get arrested for marijuana or some, you know, a drug arrest or something like that. We go because somebody has a suspicious person behind their vehicle, it will get identified that by the dispatchers, and then when we arrive, it might get closed out as a drug arrest or something like that. No questions there. We have crimes involving children. This is just obviously something that police don't like dealing with. It's our detectives do a lot of it. We have they're time intensive investigations, and once again, these are how it's coded through our dispatch center. But sex offenses will include like everything from our school resource officers identifying a photo going around in the high school of inappropriate photos and things like that would be listed under this. Child pornography, if we open a case on that. Misconduct with a minor, things like that. So it's kind of a broad range of sex offenses that deal, but most of them are involving, and most sex offenses, because this would exclude rape or something like that if we got called. So most of these are dealing with children of the 31 we had last year. Molestation cases, if you look, once again, the COVID year, there were 1. And we do have our thoughts on how this works. So I went to a meeting with, it was countywide, and there were probably 8 counties at the time, and talking about Du Bois County being identified as having a lot of sex crimes, child molestation, things like that, out of these 8 counties in the area. And kind of like it was a bad thing, or I thought they were kind of trying to say that we had more people here. We don't. What we do is we have more services that we're identifying these people, and the victims and the people that are committing these crimes. I think like the COVID year, students, child molestations weren't being identified because they weren't around their teachers, they weren't going to their churches, they weren't doing that stuff. So obviously that's why 2019 to 2020 it went from 12 to 1. So I think that we are lucky in Du Bois County that we have a lot of services that identify these victims and perpetrators, and I think we're doing a fine job with that. And then you can see, too, Department of Child Services Assist. They changed it after 2018. We started getting 310 forms, what we refer to them as, and these are victims of abuse or molestations and things like that, or they just there's something going on with the child that causes the DCS to identify these subjects, to talk to them. And once they do that and do a home visit, we're now included in that. So that's why there was no information or data in 2017, 2018, and then now 2019. Obviously, we're keeping track of that. And every time a 310 form comes in, a police officer has to go and assist with those investigations, or at least those initial interviews. And then we're doing a lot of stuff with the CAC house and that just got relocated from MacArthur Street to Tammy Lampert down there. And then they do a great job, and we do a lot of forensic interviews with victims and children. The things just might be different, and they don't always lead to a complete investigation, but at least it's something going on with the child that's been identified that we need to have a forensic interview, which is undertrained people, officers, or people who went to special training to talk to children without leading them on to stuff or lead them on to questioning. So
That service is one that gets overlooked too many times as being one of critical service here in the county. It serves multiple counties, not just Du Bois.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
BICAC is a great organization, and moving into the old Fifth Street location has been a blessing.
Yeah, and I think, and just to reiterate with it, it's just we don't have more criminals or people, pedophiles or anything like that in our county. We're just doing a better job identifying them and identifying the victims. So I think that's a horrible thing to have to deal with, but I'm glad that we're doing that. Arrest is the next column. We don't use it as a matrix to really judge how we're doing as a police department. I think it's just it's something that we have to identify and just kind of look at as we go on. You see the arrest numbers have went down, and they've stayed down since COVID. There's several factors in that. During the COVID year, obviously people were being given notice to appear rather than warrants issued. You know, the jails weren't accepting people as much, so obviously, you know, we'd find other ways than maybe using arrest in those terms. But two interesting points on this is, well, and we'll talk about manpower in a minute, but manpower, we're down 4 officers currently, and so that will make your arrest numbers lower. And then the interesting thing during the COVID year was, like I said earlier, domestics, we had a rise in that in arrest and domestics, which is to be understood. And then I'm a little perplexed by 66 operating while intoxicated. You know, people, but I think a lot, the only thing I can think of is people were driving around with some of their entertainment when they were staying isolated, you know, and maybe people having drinks and then making bad choices and driving. But that's the only thing we can really think of is, you know, because people were staying in more, didn't have to go out, and the bars were closed, but those numbers were still up. So I don't know, just a little confusing on that. That is why that is. That's all we could come up with. Question on arrest. The last box I have on here is mental health. Mental health is it's the hot word in law enforcement across the country, and it's something that we deal with a lot. Nancy had brought up a Board of Public Works meeting about welfare checks, and that's not all necessarily mental health. It can be everything from a person on the side of the road, passed out in a car, someone not acting normal outside of Walmart. Those are all, I haven't heard from my grandmother, I can't get a hold of her at the loft, whatever it is those are all, a lot of those are welfare checks are coded that way, but then a lot of them are mental health issues with that. So that's why I've included it in mental health, because someone's just not acting right or they're not acting normal, and the officers have to deal with it. So welfare checks, we do quite a bit of those, obviously at least one a day, and then overdoses are, you know, is something we're dealing with. COVID year is expected to be again, you know, it's up because people are home and maybe dealing with the pandemic with substances or whatever, and to get through it, and we're ODing. One point with that is we average 2 or 3 Narcan uses a year for the police department, and I say that, and that's low in a number of what we actually deal with in our community. Luckily, we have the fire department, first responders get a lot of these medical runs before we're ever even notified. So they're issuing Narcan, and then, you know, by the time an officer arrives, they have to make a determination what is causing this person to be down or being unresponsive. People lie to the police, right? And so we show up there, and there's no drugs or anything. I don't know what's wrong with them, and then we have to figure out what's wrong. Luckily, by the time we do deal with, find out what's going on, EMS, you know, is being stationed in Jasper. 5 minutes is a long time to wait for EMS, you know, so we're fortunate in that. So then we'll let them dose Narcan or whatever's needed for that person. So, but I still think that, I mean, that's 2 or 3 saves a year that our guys are doing, you know, or at least issuing that out, and that's a good
Everybody trained on the Narcan.
Everybody's trained on it. Everybody carries it, and you know, and use it. But you know, between us and the fire department, I'd say, you know, they probably do it 2 or 3 times a year. Also, that's 5, and then I would say EMS, they're dosing it out 10 times a year. So that number's not really reflective of some of the overdose issues we have. Next is suicide and attempts. It's suicides and suicidal attempts. Those numbers go down. We deal with a lot of mental health issues, and all I can say is that hopefully they're continuing to go down is because of awareness, and people are more aware, and it's something more people talk about. Even in law enforcement world, you know, we're looking more at working with Cal and getting social services and mental assistance with officers dealing with trauma and things like that. You know, obviously we see a lot of things that people don't want to see, and police officers are tough guys, but I think it does wear on them after a while. So, I mean, I think that we hope that number continues to go down, and I hope that it's awareness in the community. And once again, I think Du Bois County, Jasper are doing good things in that world of identifying people and giving them help when they need it. And then mental illnesses and disorders, those numbers go up. In 2017, we had 84, and then kind of went down, and then we're back up to 87 now. And I think people just, it is a problem, and it's something that our officers have to, we train on every year and dealing with people, and a lot of those calls are repeat offenders, unfortunately. And I think we're going to Mayor has a meeting scheduled for to help with maybe some of that. Some of these, Bloomington has a real successful social workers. They have 3 employed by the police department now. I don't know if we're at that point, but we've had discussions on maybe going in jointly with the county and doing something at the county level and letting all the police departments use a social worker, because somebody might not be suicidal or they might not, but they can live on their own, but they're not making good decisions. They're just not living in good environments, and those people need help, and to get those people help as far as the law enforcement standpoint is very difficult. So
I'm looking at that number and seeing it's about one every 4 days that you guys are dealing with the mental health,
right.
like with the averages, so.
Nathan, we're down 4 officers. Are they primarily retirements, or do we have officers leaving?
It primarily retirements, I guess. We have had some leave. One officer left earlier this year. We actually lost some of the other departments. Some retirements. We've lost some officers that just had opportunities to do other things, and I don't know. We're not that much different than any other agency. I don't think. It's just.
Are our courts really lenient on their? It's kind of interesting because they're interviewing this lady for the Supreme Court. And what was interesting about it was there's recommended sentencing for things, but hers were way down here. She gives somebody that was supposed to have 10 years, 3 months for sex offenses, for child pornography and stuff like that. Are we?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot. We are handling it. No, I think we're handling the way the courts think we need to be handling. Has it changed from when I started as a police officer to now on sentencing? Absolutely. And I think that there's merits both ways, and I think we do these investigations and we arrest somebody and we think they need to be incarcerated. That's the police officer side, but then the courts, we're about rehabilitation too, and we understand that. And community corrections is doing a lot more in getting people where they have to report to community corrections, but they can still work and provide for their families and things like that. So there's merit in those things too.
One category that's not on here is repeat offenders. Is that something that would be interesting to?
Yeah, it would be hard to, and that would be more with the courts to get that information.
You arrest somebody, and then they're let out on whatever, and you have to arrest them again.
Right, and I think that bail reform has been a difference, and some of this, and we've been trying to work around that bail reform, like where somebody gets arrested and they might not sit in jail. Like there was a point where, and I think we've talked about it before, where we were shoplifters. We were arresting them for theft, and we'd take them to jail, and they released them. Before we were even done with our paperwork, there was no bond, anything needed, and that's difficult for officers to accept. Accept. Yeah, and and we do it, and then before we're done with the paperwork, they're back out on the streets, and they can do it again. And that's gotten better. And I think, this is a new process with the courts, and they're addressing it, and we're working with the prosecutor's office. So at least the good point with it is there's still open dialogue to where it's not, hey, this is the way we're doing it. It's still, they're listening to both sides, and we're addressing issues, and we're kind of going back to arresting someone. And then now there's rules too, where if you're on bond, or if not on bond, but if you've been released for pretrial or arrest or something like that, and then you commit another crime, then you got to sit in jail until you see the judge. And those things have helped a lot. So it's gotten a lot better. There was a point where we thought it was really bad, but it's coming around and
Okay.
working a lot better.
Give Chief credit because it took some dialogue with the court system, with those and the judges and the prosecutor's office to see what was happening. And so having that dialogue, having that open dialogue with them and getting them to understand the issue we were having in law enforcement was big. So
Have we noticed a shift? I know we lost a high call volume area on Mill Street here recently. Have we noticed that some of those calls shifting to a different area of town yet, or replacing that, or is it kind of dispersed a little bit?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, yeah, and it's when they start shifting around, then it's hard to tell,
Settle in again?
yeah, where it's going to settle. Yeah. Yeah. So mileage. This is kind of interesting. We have. So in 2017, we had about around 188,000 miles driven for the department, and averaged about 15,000 a month. And then 2021, unfortunately, we're up to about 216,000 a year is what we had last year, and about 18,000 a month. Bad for gas prices to be high when we're going up on mileage, but I think it goes with the call volume and all that stuff. The more calls we go to, the more we're running to. So I mean, I think the guys are. They're out, they're driving. We have less guys on, and that's my next thing is personnel. As 4.5 years, I've been the chief of police, and we have hired 13 officers in my 4.5 years, and we're going to hire 2 more, I think, by the end of the year. I know we are. And we have 1 position open. We've been down 4 since October. We have, and I say down 4, we have people hired, but like Joe, or there's an officer that's on, he's on light duty. He got injured while on duty. We have 1 position we haven't filled yet that we're trying to fill right now. And then we have 2 guys that are in the academy, which those 2 guys in the academy are hired. But once again, they're not providing services. I mean, they're going to the academy. And so it's about a year, not quite, about a year before they're hired, and they're going through the field training program and everything like that before they're providing service to the community. 1 week, I think I've told you at pension time, 1 week as chief have I had a full staff, and that wasn't a full staff providing services, that was a full staff hired. And so it's in my 4.5 years. So
Your magic number?
25. 25 officers are a magic number. And we've hired 5 dispatchers and 4 auxiliary. And Chief Tarvin, I'm so jealous of him. When he's 7 years, he went without hiring somebody. And so, I mean, I imagine and I keep telling myself, where's the day go? And it seems like we're hiring people as the day. I mean, just a lot of backgrounds and things that we have to do to hire someone compared to other jobs. We have to do background investigations on them, which takes, can take up to 2 weeks on some people, getting, visiting their schools, visiting their former employees, things like that. So it's just not hire somebody off the street. We have gotten some guys from Kentucky that were already law enforcement, but we still have to do all that stuff before they get hired, and they can get on the street a little bit quicker. But it's a lot of people, 15 by the end of the year that we've had to hire and train, not to mention being away at the academy and just in field training time. So we're really excited to get up to full staff and start providing services. Training, this is one thing we're proud of, and I think you guys should be proud of as a city council, is that last year, the Jasper Police Department totaled 1,578 hours of training. We have 24 hours that every officer is mandated to have, and that includes physical tactics, vehicle operation, firearms, things like that. Is all included in that 24 hours. And then, so we're averaging about 65 hours an officer worth of training, which is needed. And some of the highlight trainings of this past year were crisis negotiation, de-escalation, diversity training, interview interrogation techniques, basic crime scene investigation, critical incident for peer supports, where officers help their fellow officers, and then a victims course that helps identify and work with victims. That's some of the highlights of some of the stuff that our guys have done. And then closing, goals for the police department here. We have we're looking to upgrade our camera systems in our interview rooms. Our company provides our body cams. They also do interview rooms, which will be automatically sent to the prosecutor, and we don't have to download it to a disk, send it up to them, things like that, save man hours on that. So we're looking at possibly upgrading cameras as we go on. Mayor and I had talked once about hands-free reporting, writing reports, dictations for our computers. It's pretty common now. Plus, we have so much in the cars, you can run a license plate by just talking into the speaker rather than taking your eyes off the road. Or, the computer is a great thing, but computers, cameras, radars, all that stuff in there, it diverts officers' attention. So that's something we're looking into. We're updating the building. We're going to be doing new flooring that's been approved by you guys already, and windows in the department. And then we're looking at a timekeeping system. We're still punching a clock for all the officers, and everybody has to add up those hours. And it's something that we think we can save man hours on our administrative assistants and things like that, and be able to give a better report to Alan and his people, and make it cleaner. And the mayor would get on my butt if I didn't mention Keep Watch program, our camera reporting system. If you have a home camera, it's not Big Brother having access to your camera. We have 42 people who have the doorbell, Ring door cameras and things like that are identified, that are registered with the city. If you have one, all we ask you to do is to register on the city's website that you have a camera. If there's a crime in your area or something big happens, or your neighbor's lawnmower gets stolen, we'll come knock on your door, say, hey, listen, we know you have a camera. Did you have anybody running around your house last night on a camera? And would you please let us see the footage, or give us access to the footage? But it does not give us a right to go into your footage at any time. It's your information. We're just wanting to identify yourself as having a camera at your house, so that we can come and say, hey, listen, this happened in your neighborhood. Did you guys have anything on your camera last night? And it's just identifying people. So we like to get that word out.
How's our dispatch situation doing? Are we back up to staff on dispatch?
Well, we actually, you read my notes. We just gave a conditional offer to our open position today. And that dispatcher will be starting April 11th. And we're looking to work with Cal on part-time. We're still identifying that's been approved and by the council, and we're going to look for those part-time employees and how we're going to deploy that and help the dispatchers, and they're really wanting to get that last person trained and get back up to full staff and get that extra help. So, no question, that's all. And thanks again for having me. I hope I didn't talk too long.
Chief, thanks for the report. I appreciate it. I think there's a lot of value in you coming before the council like that.
I'll come back if you invite me, Mayor.
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is a public hearing on the additional appropriation. It was published in Du Bois County Herald on March 9th, 2022, so I'd open the public hearing. This is relating to ordinance number 2022-02.
Seeing no public comment, Mayor, I would make a motion to close the public hearing.
I have a motion from Paul to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Second from Kevin. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next thing is ordinance number 2022-02. It's an ordinance appropriating additional money for the city of Jasper, Indiana for the remainder of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022. Appropriate additional money for 2022. It's available for one reading only procedure.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to read ordinance number 2022-02 on one reading by title only.
I have a motion from Nancy for one reading only by title only.
I'll second it.
I have a second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I don't know if Renee, if I'm going to ask you to read this or not, or should I read this?
It's up to you.
You have it in front of you?
I don't bring the agenda.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Ordinance number 2022-2, an ordinance appropriating additional money for the city of Jasper, Indiana for the remainder of the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2022.
Okay, could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2022-2?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Kevin,
I'll second. Paul?
second from Paul. Further discussion. Alan, you want to cover anything on that?
Yeah, I kind of go over the numbers and where they're at. The first one is the Buffalo Trace Golf Course land improvements. It's improvements they're doing on the 14th hole. They're redoing the green there. I believe it was in last year, but they didn't get it done, and they did not get a contract signed, so it's an additional appropriation for this year.
Had that money been encumbered from last year?
No, they didn't have a contract, so they couldn't encumber it. So, all right. The next one is repair charges at the deck at the mill. They're redoing outside the wooden deck around the mill.
And Rob spoke to us about that.
Yeah, yeah. And then the next one is equipment. They're ordering golf carts this year for delivery in 2023. They get them every other year. Last year they got them in at the end of 2021. They think there's going to be longer delay now, I believe. So they're ordering them now in order to get them in 2023.
From the engineering department, and that,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. 28,000 for the GIS system. We did not encumber that. We should have encumbered that last year, but we did not. So we had to do additional appropriation, and it's this year it's going to be the 27,000 something, and then next year will be the same thing, and then after that we'll go. We'll see what they have.
It was for 3 years, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That was with Centerpoint, I think. Centerpoint was the,
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. The next one is the 100,000 for downtown project for REA to move to be on site weekly instead of bi-weekly. This is just to give us somebody on site to help with the contracting and all that, so we know what's going on with it. Originally, they were going to be on bi-weekly, but then we decided that it would be better if they were on weekly. We also extended the contract till October, or
September.
we extended the contract so that has an additional cost onto that. And that's coming from the Lowett Special Distribution Fund. Basically, it's going to take that down to about 332,000 in it. By the end of all this, it should be down to about 100,000. All right. And the next two are for the downtown project. The Cumulative Capital Development Fund is for the streets and sidewalks. We're taking $1,100,000 out of that one. That will bring it down to $751,000 when this is all done in that one. And the other part is the edit, which we did $1 million this year. This is $1.5 million for 2020. For next year, we have to have it all encumbered before we can sign the contract, or all appropriated before we can sign the contract. So that's what that is. So that's 1.5 million of that. The other is the 500,000 we're getting from the county that they're going to pay us back for, but we got to have it appropriated before we can sign. So that's what that number's for. And last one I've got is storm sewer project, 522. That's for the storm on State Road 164 that the Stormwater Management Fund is doing. When that's all done, they're going to have about $850,000 left in that fund. All right, any additional questions?
Thanks for that explanation.
Alan, go back to number, section 4, I guess it was, when you referred to the Lowit Special Distribution Fund.
Uh-huh.
Did you say that I think you had referred to a $100,000 appropriation?
Yes. And it was, we've,
I'm not seeing that jump out on this ordinance. I see 71,000, and then it goes straight to 1,100,000.
It's at the bottom of this
At the bottom of that page.
Page, I think.
No, it didn't print.
cut off, Chad, when you printed it.
So
Here's an extra.
what you're saying is look at the legal size.
Yeah. Here's an extra copy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then, we talked about the construction services oversight, and when it comes to any project, I think we found the value in having someone that is responsible and accountable to ensure that it is built to spec. And so having the architectural design company for this continue with it was what we felt was appropriate.
2 weeks can be a long time if something went bad on
You
the
bet.
early day. Yeah.
So, having reviewed that, I would entertain a motion to adopt.
I'll make the motion, we pass it, we adopt it.
A motion,
I'll second it.
motion from Chad to adopt 2022
Chad, Lincoln,
It's already, didn't
We
we?
had the motion.
had the motion.
Kevin and Paul, we just had discussion, yeah.
Need a vote, yes.
All right, so we just need to go ahead with the vote. All right, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, sorry. Had to back it up. Yeah, you all have to sign that. Okay, next item on the agenda is 2022-3, and it's an ordinance to rezone certain property within jurisdictional limits of the Planning Commission of the City of Jasper, Indiana. It's an application for rezone KL Crodel LLC and KK Washington Properties LLC. Available for one reading only.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we read by one reading only.
I'll second that motion.
Motion from Paul and a second from Nancy. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The city attorney, please read ordinance number 2022-3 by title only.
Ordinance number 2022-3, an ordinance to rezone certain property within the jurisdictional limits of the Planning Commission of the City of Jasper, Indiana.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2022-3? Having no motion to pass and adopt, and this did receive a,
Can we have
open
a,
up for discussion right now.
Open it for discussion.
did I?
I was just going to say, we'll open it for discussion, and we can make a motion to deny at that point. But background on this is we had a applicant come in through a local company wanting to rezone an area on 231, 3306, I think was the property address. Yeah, 3306 Newton, from a B2 business, which we had just rezoned in the fall, in there to bring them up to standards of which they were currently operating, to go to a B3 to install, wanted to build a gas station, just as you crest the hill there on 231, over, yes, ma'am?
It's actually, it was actually from B1.
It was B1 to B2?
B3.
Yeah.
B1 to B3, excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry. But anywho, we ultimately denied the request for the variance on that, to rezone that to B3, and as it was in there. And then I was contacted later on about another location further out that they're working on securing at this point.
Unfavorable recommendation.
That's right.
A little bit more
Please.
background information. The owner of that property just did in November actually have it rezoned from R2 to B1.
B1.
So it, within the past 6 months, it actually was residentially zoned.
And Renee, there were several other properties that were rezoned from residential to B1 within that same, whenever that was, November or October
That's right.
meeting.
Right, that's correct.
3 subject tracks came along and kind of give a little continuity in there. Just didn't feel it was the right fit, not the right area for traffic flow to come through. And several neighbors did show up and remonstrate against as well. So ultimately, we voted it down with an unfavorable recommendation coming to the city council then. So not seeing any ordinance to, or a motion to pass that, I would go ahead and make a motion to deny that rezone on this property from the B3 to, or B1 to B3.
I'm not sure, Paul, so they're wanting to build a gas station in this area, rezone it and build a gas station?
They asked to do so, and we chose not to allow that to happen at this point.
And they had pictures and everything. It was a very, very good presentation.
Those offices there, yes.
Yeah, they're-
Yeah, no, I agree, I just.
They had a fantastic presentation, and I tried to explain to them in there that we, looks like you're going to build a great product. We'd love to have you come to the north side. We desperately need a gas station north of town in there. That just wasn't the right location with traffic patterns and the line of sight as you come over that hill.
In looking at the property too, it's surrounded by residential.
Right, that's right.
Well, the only thing is, so many of those residences now have been rezoned, but not the ones.
But they have their special, they have their special
Usage.
Well, and there's still residences behind that property that,
B1. That property can now, really, they wouldn't have to get a variance.
That's right.
Operate a small office out of that home.
We had a law office, we had a doctor's office, we had a financial office right there in that
Right.
neighborhood.
Previously, she had to have the,
She was operating with a special exception for residential into a law B1 zone.
I'll second Paul's motion to deny the request for this rezoning.
Okay, I have a motion from Paul and a second from Nancy to deny the rezone. Ordinance number 2022-3. Any further discussion on it?
I will say that when the meeting was over or ending, Paul did approach the people that were petitioning for this and said exactly what he said. Hey, we'd love for you to be in Jasper. That just isn't the right spot. Let's help you find a spot that works well for you.
And apparently they were receptive to that, so working forward, moving that. Hopefully we'll get to do the same thing here and come back in a couple of months and tell you we're ready to rezone and approve.
Okay, so I have the motions. All in favor of denying ordinance number 2022-3, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I have ordinance number 2022-4, which is an ordinance affixing salaries and wages for elected officials and the civil city employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022, amending ordinance number 2021-. This ordinance, is this available for one reading only or not?
Yes, it is, yeah.
So Could I have a motion to consider the ordinance for one reading only?
I'll make that motion.
Chad?
I'll second.
Second from Paul. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Could I have a motion to have the ordinance read in full or by title only?
Move to read by title only.
A motion from Kevin to read by title only. Second from Phil. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Could the city attorney please read the ordinance number 2022-4 by title only?
Ordinance number 2022-4, an ordinance affixing salaries and wages for the elected officials and the civil city employees of the city of Jasper, Indiana for the year 2022, amending ordinance number 2021-30.
Could I have a motion to pass and adopt ordinance number 2022-4?
I'll make that motion.
I have a motion from Kevin,
I'll second.
second from Nancy. And I need to open it up for further discussion.
Well, I'd like to say thanks, Tom, because he talked to us individually. I think he told me he was going to talk to everyone and explain this beforehand, and we appreciate that very much.
Any other?
I'd like to have it re-explained.
Tom, would you want to come up and explain?
So we have an employee that is going home to spend more time with their children, and we are going to have loss of a full-time position and have a part-time position. This position requires a specific degree, and the individual deals with a specific age group, because it is at the senior center, that requires special consideration and care. We're looking to go from $14 an hour to $21 an hour on this. Cale and I discussed this, and he let me know that before this employee was hired, the rate was $35 an hour to contract it. Currently, I've done some research on it, that price is now $60 an hour to contract it. So if we were not to keep an individual in a part-time position at $21 an hour, it would cost us, the city, $60 an hour. So we're all trying to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. So this would be the best way of going about it. I also did further research. The ACSM Health and Fitness Journal, in an article, Salaries of Exercise Science Professionals in the United States. I know you've all read this, so has a summary of surveys conducted, and they had 3 different groups, which included personal trainers, group exercise, personal trainers, group fitness, and personal trainers. The first sample was 1,200 folks, and that was $21 an hour. Second set was over 3,000 individuals, and that was $28 an hour. The third set were 1,000 individuals at $23 an hour. They also had stated in this article that contractors command a substantially higher hourly wage than personal trainers as employees. So we're just trying to do the right thing and have a good employee. It's a necessary thing to have for this.
Tom, about how many hours would she work per week?
So in the low season, 10 to 15, peak season, 15 to 20.
And how many people participate usually? I mean, you had your COVID years, can't count that.
COVID years were bad. Example, we're picked right back up and we are full.
Which is how many people?
So you can get 50 people in an exercise group.
So I had a question here, Tom. Was she a permanent full-time employee?
She was a full-time employee with benefits. And
so now she's wanting to go down to spend more time with her
kids.
So she would go from the 14 to the 21 right away here?
She wasn't 14 before.
No.
Probably more than that before.
Yeah, she was making,
Saying that this would be the range for this job then as a permanent part-time?
but 21 would be the high end of that.
The high end of that? So is that where she would start out?
We would have to negotiate that to see. And it's not necessarily her. We would open this up to other employees with the city
Okay.
to
And
see.
what happens if she decides she doesn't want to take it? Then what do we do? Do we go looking for a full-time employee or?
Then well, no,
Contract employee.
we contract it out.
Okay, see, I must have been the first one you explained this
You
to
were.
because you, what a certified instructor was or anything like that.
Well,
So
I did a lot more. I did a lot more research since I talked to you.
talk to me after that because I was against this at one time.
And I was too, because I'm not sure exactly what was going on, but I
Well,
feel better about it now.
I put in a lot more research to it to find out, so.
Because I spent a week here wondering, what the heck is going on here for sure.
I do know people that take that class and they love the class or the classes, and it's full. I don't know that she could get too many more people in that room, really.
And the great thing is that I don't know her name or I don't know her or anything, so I'm just asking,
Yeah.
what's going on there.
And my comment to you was losing from a full-time employee with benefits to a permanent part-time without benefits in there. It's somewhat of a wash to come through.
It's just the class of the employee called permanent, part-time is,
And that's something I brought up with Tom is, how's the rest of the permanent part-time people going to take it? So
Depends on
that's something we may have to deal with.
well, you with this last presentation, you showed why that
Right.
That's,
it's justified, so.
Trainer,
I
yeah.
dug a little deeper for that.
All right.
That might be good enough. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying.
Gail, you got anything to add to this?
Yeah, this individual has 2 degrees from IU and a couple other certifications too, so.
I was kind of thinking the same.
Gar?
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say the city council is more than welcome to join the class for those that
Kill
are
us.
55 and older anytime you want. And we do utilize the social media pages for those classes that you're more than welcome to join. Some of you, not all of you, but some of you can. But we would welcome you if you're younger than 55 at the Hobig Center as well.
Do they have?
But you ask about what about other permanent part-time? We do have specialized individuals in certain positions, and some of those, as you know, their wage is a little higher than others. And I'm glad Tom did his homework after talking to John, and got a little bit more information to talk to the rest of you about it, because when I first started 10 years ago, we might have had 10, 15 people. Now we're 50, probably could go to 70, but we have 2 classes instead of 1. And so, we have this momentum at the Hobig Center, and I would hate to lose that with what we have going on. And I think from an individual that has the education, the background, the experience, and taking them from a full-time to a part-time and not having benefits, and we're not increasing, I'm not going to look to increase any wage other than what they have now and just going from a full-time to a part-time position. So, that's some of it to look at too, is we're not adding any additional wage here. We're actually diminishing because we're not going to offer them the full-time benefit.
And I looked at the other ordinance that we're amending, the positions there, but there's not a dollar amount by it.
Right, correct.
When you say it's 14 to 21, there's really nothing set currently.
Right now, there's nothing in there because we didn't have that position filled.
Right.
So what we try to do is just eliminate those so we could say, okay, nobody at the park department, especially since Tom's on the newer side, is we don't have anybody in that position. So he has to come to the board and get that approval from you guys to fill that position and have this discussion. So that's why we remove that wage.
Gail, how much as a dollar amount is the city's benefit package worth?
Depending on, if it's an employee, just an employee on its own or family, but I would say you take 25% of what their wage is and add that to it, and that's what their benefits are. So.
At a minimum, I think.
That seems low to me.
It's low, but depending on what the circumstances.
Especially with vacations and holidays.
Yeah.
Add all that, it's probably closer to 35, but
I think, just thinking about it, I think it's like 33%. But that was a year or two ago whenever I last did that.
So was the present position Older Americans Director?
No, it would be
You're not going to call it that.
Community Engagement Coordinator.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay, I see it on you. Are you looking to fill that then, or see how this goes?
Yeah, and really that position is totally different than what she is doing. So, yeah, we are looking at that to slide somebody into that. We've got tourism and other things that we want to try to work somebody into that, and that really fits better with the Community Engagement Coordinator position. So,
Well, I watched too much Fox today, so I'm interrogating you.
I appreciate the comments so that I could do more homework, though. So
Yeah.
you encourage me.
Say that, it was on C-SPAN. I was
Well.
used to keep drilling people right now.
To that point, at the Park Department meeting this last month as well, there was about the event center. I think, is that what they said, rather than the Older American Center? That there were some people that would fit that 55 and older bill that didn't feel like they could go to the Older American Center potentially. So maybe some marketing changes coming in the future for
That discussion is.
center, the
been
Art
made
of
as-
Hobby Community Center instead
I
of.
hope she accepts because she's an excellent person and employee and does a great job.
She is. But we are opening it up to all city employees, so.
Well, they'd have to have the proper certifications then.
Right.
That's the process.
So I have a motion from Kevin and a second from Nancy. Any other questions? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and now I have a gas contractor's license from Mr. Tucker, and I think you saw
84. That was-
Can I get a motion to approve Mr. Tucker?
So moved.
Motion from Dave and
Second.
second from John. Any further discussion on that? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I guess I just have a simple question. Do we ever require any recertification? Is that built into the licensing?
Once they have the license, they're good to go there.
I was just curious.
That's a good point.
Do they have to have like annual training or something to keep their certification? I don't, Brad Thomas maybe could answer that question.
I personally would still like to see us raise it to 80 from 70. I think 7 and 10 is a little light on the gas gas line certification, but it may be a very difficult test, and I don't know.
We've had that discussion numerous times. Didn't we suggest raising that to 80 as our approval?
Questions are the critical ones.
Yeah.
Because there's some trick stuff in there, and they even said they could take it, and they said there's some trick words in there that make that test a little.
Get the mandatory questions answered. Then
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that was the last item on the agenda for business today, so I would.
Make a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, if I might.
Oh, please.
Just by way of information, for the edification of all and the good of the order, tomorrow's an important date for the city. And in 1866, on March 24th, there were, I think, 48 signatories that came before the county commissioners petitioning for incorporation as a town. And the population at the time was 507. If you can imagine that. So, in a sense, when we're going about discerning and deliberating and trying to execute the people's business in the city, think about that, how far we've come. I think we're all up to the challenge. I know that I'm personally honored to serve with all of you, so thank you.
It's a good point to bring up. Thank you.
Thanks for your research on that.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn?
Okay, I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Kevin, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.